Alright, now let's go to the first income payment subject to final withholding tax. You're not probably even aware that the interest on your deposits is subjected to final withholding tax at the rate of 20%. Now, you will notice that in your passbook at the end of every month, if the interest is credited every end of the month, you will see there interest income, credit, and then there's another debit for interest tax. Now, that's the final withholding tax on the interest income. And take note, that is at 20%. Now, okay, the next income payment that is subject to final withholding tax is your interest from long-term deposits or investments in the form of savings, common or individual trust funds, deposit substitutes, investment management accounts, and other investments evidenced by certificates in such form prescribed by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Now, take note of this. If the withholding period is more than 5 years, that is actually exempt from final withholding tax. So if you're going to have a time deposit and it's going to be held by the bank for more than 5 years or 5 years, 5 years or more, meaning that will be not subject to final withholding tax anymore. But if, for example, the withholding period is from 3 years to less than 4 years, the final withholding tax rate is at 12%. Now also, if your withholding period is less than 3 years, the final tax rate is at 20%. Now, you have two types of royalties that are subject to income payment, subject to final withholding tax. The first is the royalty, which is other than on books, literary works, and musical compositions. Please take note that for this, your tax rate is at 20% if you are a domestic and resident foreign corporation or a non-resident alien engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. However, if you are a non-resident foreign corporation, your tax rate for this is at 32%. Now later, I will be discussing the difference between a royalty and a service fee, because some of the payments are sometimes construed as service fees or as royalties instead of service fees. Now, you also have another royalty on books, literary works, and musical compositions. Now, I'm not sure if you're a fan of Ray Valera. Now, Ray Valera sold there is a joke in the entertainment industry that says that if Ray Valera did not sell his compositions to the singers, then he would have been receiving a royalty now on all his compositions. And the rate of the final withholding tax on royalties is at 10%. Now let's have a definition of your royalties. Now, as defined in the tax code, royalties actually include payments for copyright, patent, design, any industrial or commercial or supply of scientific, technical, or supply of any assistance which is not yet revealed to the public. Now, that would be the use or the right to use in the Philippines any industrial, commercial, or scientific equipment, the supply of scientific, technical, industrial, or commercial knowledge or information, the supply of any assistance that is ancillary and subsidiary to and is furnished as a means of enabling the application or enjoyment of any such property or right as is mentioned in the previous paragraphs. Now, this could also be the supply of services to a non-resident person, no, or his employee in connection with the use of property or rights belonging to or the installation or operation of any brand, machinery, or other apparatus purchased from a non-resident person. Technical advice, assistance, or services rendered in connection with technical management of administration of any scientific, industrial, or commercial undertaking, venture, or project or scheme, or the use or the right to use any motion picture, films, or videotapes for use in connection with television, tapes for use in connection with radio broadcasting. Now, those are the royalties that are subject to the 20% final withholding tax rate. Now, let us try to define royalties from service fees. Remember, in my definition of royalty, there is here the supply of services by a non-resident person or his employee in connection with the use of property or rights belonging to or the installation or operation of any brand, machinery, and other apparatus purchased from a non-resident person. Sometimes, under this definition of royalty, we would misconstrue service fees as royalties. Remember that the tax rate for final withholding on royalties and service fees are different. If it is a royalty, it will be subject to 20% final withholding tax rate. If it is a service fee, since the person is a non-resident alien, no, or non-resident individual who is conducting business or trade who is not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines, then that the rate that we use for the service fee is 25%. Remember, we are not talking about the professional fees of local individuals. We are talking here about individuals who are not residents of the Philippines and who are alien individuals, meaning they are not conducting trade or business in the Philippines. Now, for royalties, where the contract to render services involves the transfer of special knowledge and experience or know-how that is unrevealed to the public, that is a royalty. Meaning, it's something that I do not know. And say, for example, you rent the technology of Canon in order for you to have a cooling system, things like that. Those are royalties. But for service fees, it is where the contract involves the use of customary skills of the contractor's calling or profession to execute work for himself, for the contractee, or where the advisor uses his special knowledge and experience to do the work himself without imparting the same to the other party. Now, that's a service fee. Now, that is when you hire a consultant, no, to do some work for you in the Philippines. And remember that income payment is not just subject to income tax but also subject to VAT. It would be nice if before you engage in such transactions, you could call the Bureau of Internal Revenue and engage the International Tax Affairs Division on the transaction, so that you will have a a ruling first that will tell you how much percent you will be deducting from the income payment, and also what are the other taxes that would be involved for such type of income payment. Now, let's go to other income payments that are subject to final withholding tax. I hope I made the royalties clear. Now, if If you have any other questions on royalties, you can always write it on the board, on the chat box, so that our staff can filter your questions. Now, let's go to cash and property dividends from a domestic corporation, joint stock company, insurance or mutual fund companies, regional operating headquarters in case of non-residents, or on the share of an individual partner in a partnership, except general professional partnerships. Now, take note that for general professional partnerships, the share of the individual partner is subject to income tax and not to final withholding tax. Now, or on the share of an individual in the net income after tax of an association, a joint account, or a joint venture or consortium. Now, the tax on dividends shall be imposed on dividends which are declared from profits made after December 31, 1997. Now, the tax on dividends was not yet implemented before December 31, 1997. Now, beginning January 1, January 1, year 2000, our tax rate is at 10%. Now, of course, this is not to say that dividends to corporations from corporations are already being taxed. This is only for dividends given to individuals. No, our rate is at 10%. Now, next you have dividends from a domestic corporation subject to the condition that the country of domicile of the non-resident foreign corporation allows tax credits against foreign tax due on said income equivalent to taxes deemed to have been paid in the Philippines at 17% or does not impose tax at all on the dividends. This is where we have tax treaties with foreign countries. But of course, before you can take advantage of this rate, you first have to get a ruling from the BIR, International Tax Affairs Division, because the 15% is not automatic. You have to apply for that. It can even be lowered depending on the area, no, of the corporation where you are giving dividends to. Okay? Now, on interest income from foreign currency deposit units, you have foreign currency deposits that are, well, of course, deposited in the bank. The rate for those is at 7.5%. If the payee is a domestic and resident foreign corporation, a citizen, or a resident alien, it goes for all. Okay? Now again, if you have any other questions, please just write them on the chat box so that we can filter your questions. The next type of income payment is on capital gains. Now take note, this is not the capital gains tax. This is the capital gains that is subject to final withholding tax. Now this is capital gains on the sale or exchange or other disposition of real property located in the Philippines classified as a capital asset. Now, if it is a capital asset, that means that it is being used in the business. Now, in the case of sale on installment of real property classified as capital asset, the procedures on the sale of real property classified as ordinary asset shall apply. Now, if it is on installment, with the exemption that the withholding tax on the former shall be final, whereas that on the latter shall be creditable, and that is subject to Revenue Regulation 17-2003 as amended by your Revenue Regulation 30-2003. And of course, the tax rate for that is at 6%. Okay? Now, these are for all payees who are domestic corporations, citizens, resident aliens, non-resident aliens engaged in trade or business in the Philippines, non-resident aliens not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. Now, that's for capital gains.